The night was quiet, but the air carried a strange weight. Cameras flashed in the distance, reporters whispered, and people gathered outside a glowing Hollywood studio. Everyone thought they were there for another interview, another appearance, another moment in the endless cycle of fame. But hidden behind the polished lights and the noise, something deeper was waiting to unfold. Sandra Bullock walked through the corridor, her steps slow but steady. Her face looked calm to those watching, but inside her heart was racing. She had carried a secret for years, a truth so heavy it sometimes kept her awake at night. She had built walls of strength. She had smiled when people expected her to. She had acted through tears that no one else could see. But tonight, something told her that silence could no longer protect her. At the far end of the room, Keanu Reeves sat quietly. He was always calm, always humble, always the one who carried storms inside his chest, but never let them harm the people around him. He looked up and saw Sandra walking toward him. His eyes softened instantly, the way they always did when she entered the room. He had known her for decades, through laughter, through struggle, through moments that neither of them ever spoke about in public. And still, there was something unspoken, something that hung in the air between them like a fragile thread that refused to break. The world knew them as stars, Hollywood icons, legends of the screen. But in that moment, they were just two people carrying hearts too heavy for silence. Sandra sat down beside him. For a moment she said nothing, only listening to the sound of her own breathing. Keanu noticed her trembling hands, and without a word he reached out and held one gently. His touch was calm, steady, grounding her as if to say, "I am here. I will always be here." Her eyes filled with tears, but she forced herself to breathe. "Keanu," she whispered, her voice soft and broken. "There is something I should have told you long ago." He didn't move, didn't interrupt, didn't try to fix the moment. He only looked into her eyes, waiting, giving her space to let her heart find its voice. And in that silence, she realized why people trusted him so deeply. He had the gift of presence. He made you feel seen, even when you felt invisible to the world. Her voice shook again, but this time she pushed forward. "All these years I carried something inside me. I tried to bury it, tried to pretend it was nothing. But every time I saw you, every time you smiled or you listened or you cared in that quiet way of yours, the weight inside me grew heavier. Because the truth is, my heart was never silent. My heart was always speaking your name." Her words fell into the air like fragile glass, and for a moment she feared they might shatter everything they had built. But when she looked into Keanu's eyes, she did not see judgment. She did not see distance. She saw something else, something deep, something gentle, something she had been longing for without even realizing it. His eyes said what his lips did not. They spoke of understanding, of respect, of a bond that had grown far beyond the walls of fame or time. And though he stayed silent, that silence was louder than any words she had ever heard. In that moment, the noise outside faded. The flashing cameras became distant echoes. It felt as though the world itself had stepped aside to allow two souls to finally meet in truth. And yet, even as her heart felt lighter, Sandra knew this was only the beginning. Because the truth, once spoken, never leaves things unchanged. The night still had many turns ahead, and with each one their bond would be tested in ways neither of them could imagine. The studio lights dimmed, and the echo of Sandra's words still lingered between them. For a few seconds, the silence was so heavy it felt like the walls themselves were holding their breath. But silence can be dangerous, too. It leaves room for doubts, fears, and questions to creep in. Outside, the crowd grew restless. Paparazzi were shouting, calling their names, trying to catch even the faintest glimpse. Fans held signs and phones high in the air, waiting for something worth capturing. But what no one knew was that the real story was unfolding in whispers, far away from the crowd, in a room where two souls were finally daring to face the truth. Sandra looked at Keanu, waiting for him to speak, waiting for any sign that her words had not broken something precious between them. Every second felt like an eternity. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear it in her ears. Finally, Keanu leaned closer, his voice so soft it barely rose above a whisper. "Sandra." Do you know what your courage means to me?" She blinked, surprised. "Courage?" He nodded slowly. "It takes courage to speak what the heart has carried for so long. You think you were hiding your feelings, but your kindness always showed me. The way you looked after me on set when no one else noticed. The way you laughed at my silence, not because it was funny, but because you respected the quiet. I always knew, Sandra. Maybe not in words, but in the way your heart spoke without speaking." His words cut through her doubts like sunlight breaking through clouds. Yet, with that light came another wave of fear. If he had always known, then why had he never spoken? Why had he stayed silent all these years? She lowered her gaze, whispering, "Then why didn't you say anything? Why did you stay quiet?" Keanu looked at her with eyes that carried storms and peace at the same time. "Because sometimes silence is protection. You were healing from your own wounds. I was walking through mine. If I had spoken then, maybe it would have been the wrong time. And I never wanted to add weight to your heart. I wanted you to feel free, not tied down by words you weren't ready for." His explanation struck her deeply. It was not rejection. It was not indifference. It was respect, so rare, so genuine that it made her chest ache. But before she could reply, a loud knock echoed on the door. The spell broke instantly. A voice called out, "Miss Bullock, Mr. Reeves, the press is waiting. You need to step out." They exchanged glances, both knowing that stepping outside meant returning to the noise, the questions, the flashing lights, and the weight of expectations. The world did not care about their whispers. The world wanted headlines, drama, answers. They were not ready to give. Keanu reached for her hand again, steady and firm. "We don't have to answer to the world tonight. We just need to answer to ourselves." She squeezed his hand back, a silent agreement that no one else could hear. When they finally stepped outside, the crowd erupted. Flashes blinded them, voices overlapped. Microphones pushed closer. Reporters shouted questions. "Are you two together? Is this love finally confirmed? What does this mean for your careers?" But instead of being shaken, Sandra and Keanu stood side by side, calm and unshaken. Their silence was more powerful than any headline. Their eyes, their closeness, their quiet bond told a story that no article could ever capture fully. As they walked through the crowd, Sandra whispered just loud enough for him to hear, "This feels impossible, Keanu. How do we live like this, carrying truth in a world that only wants spectacle?" His reply was simple but strong. "We live with kindness. We live with respect. The world will always want noise, but what matters is the quiet we choose to protect." Those words settled in her heart like a promise. Yet deep inside, she knew the road ahead would not be simple. Fame had sharp edges, and truth was never safe in a world that thrived on gossip. That night, after the lights faded and the crowd disappeared, Sandra sat alone in her home. She replayed every second of their conversation, every look in his eyes, every word he spoke. And for the first time in years, she felt both free and terrified. Because speaking the truth was only the first step. Now came the harder part, living it. And somewhere in that quiet, her phone buzzed with a message. She opened it, expecting a friend, a colleague, or some meaningless update. But the name on the screen made her breath stop. It wasn't Keanu. It wasn't anyone she had expected. It was someone from her past, someone who still held a piece of her story that she had tried to bury. Her hands shook as she read the words. "I saw you tonight. We need to talk." "It's about him." Her heart dropped. The story she thought belonged only to her and Keanu was about to be pulled into shadows she never wanted to face again. The glow of the phone screen lit Sandra's face in the dark. She read the message again and again, each word cutting deeper into her chest. "I saw you tonight. We need to talk." "It's about him." Her mind spun in circles. Who could it be? Who was watching from the shadows? And what did they mean by about him? Her first instinct was fear. Fear that her quiet confession with Keanu had not been theirs alone. Fear that the truth she had finally dared to speak was now slipping out of her hands. She put the phone down, forcing herself to breathe. Outside, the city never slept. Lights flickered, sirens echoed faintly, and the hum of Los Angeles reminded her that fame was never private, never safe. The next morning, Sandra walked into her kitchen, but her coffee tasted bitter, her breakfast untouched. The words of the message haunted her. She considered ignoring it, but something inside told her that silence would only make the storm worse. By afternoon, another message arrived. This time it was clearer, more urgent. Meet me tonight. The truth will hurt if you hear it late. I will be at the old studio cafe at 9. She froze. That cafe was a place she hadn't stepped into in years. It was where she and Keanu had once spent long nights during the filming of their first movie together, laughing, sharing, dreaming, back when the world was simpler. And now, someone was pulling her back there with a message that promised pain. Her first thought was to tell Keanu, but something inside her hesitated. What if this was about his past? What if it was a wound he had buried and she was about to reopen it? She couldn't risk hurting him without knowing the truth first. When night came, Sandra wore a simple coat, sunglasses, and kept her head down as she slipped through the streets. The cafe was dimly lit, half forgotten, a relic of old Hollywood memories. As she entered, her heart pounded like a drum. A man sat in the corner, older now, but his face was familiar. She knew him instantly. It was Mark, an assistant from the set of their early days. He had been quiet, observant, always in the background. She had not seen him in decades. Mark looked up, his eyes tired but sharp. "You came?" he said softly. Sandra slid into the seat across from him. "Why did you call me? What is this about?" His voice was low, almost trembling. "I saw the way you looked at him last night. And I know you finally told him what your heart carried. But before you go deeper, there's something you should know about Keanu. Something he never told you." Her chest tightened. "What are you talking about?" Mark leaned forward, his hands clasped together. "Back when you two were filming, there was a night no one talks about. A night when Keanu made a choice that changed everything. It wasn't about career, it wasn't about fame. It was about you." Sandra's eyes widened. "Me?" Mark nodded. "He gave up something for you. Something so important that it cost him years of his life, but he never wanted you to know. He thought protecting you meant hiding the truth. But I can't keep it hidden anymore. You deserve to know." Sandra felt her throat tighten, her palms sweaty. Her mind flashed back to those early days. The missed opportunities, the unexplained silences, the times Keanu seemed to disappear when she needed him most. Had it all been connected? Before Mark could continue, the sound of the cafe door opening broke the moment. Sandra turned, her breath catching. It was Keanu. He stood there in the doorway, his eyes locking on hers immediately. But this time there was no calm softness. His gaze was sharp, almost pained, as if he already knew what was being said. Mark lowered his head. "He wasn't supposed to find us here." Sandra's heart raced. The man she trusted most, the man who had held her hand through silence, now stood before her with secrets buried deep in his past. And in that heavy moment, she realized something that chilled her to the bone. Love was not only about whispers and courage. Sometimes, love was about surviving truths that could break you. Keanu walked toward their table slowly, every step heavy with history. The cafe was silent, except for the sound of her heart. "Sandra," he said finally, his voice low, steady, but carrying weight she had never heard before. "There are things I never wanted you to know, but if you're ready to hear them, I won't hide anymore." The room felt colder, the air heavier. The story she thought was finally beginning had only just opened its darkest chapter. The cafe felt smaller than it was. Silence wrapped around the three of them like chains. Sandra's heart pounded so loudly it drowned out the faint hum of the lights above. Keanu's presence filled the room. Not with anger, not with noise, but with a gravity that made it impossible to look away. Sandra's fingers trembled against the wooden table. "Keanu," she whispered. "What does he mean?" "What did you give up for me?" Keanu's jaw tightened, his eyes flickering between her and Mark. For the first time in years, she saw something in him that shook her. Fear. Not fear of danger, not fear of the world, but fear of losing the bond that mattered most. Mark exhaled slowly, his voice heavy. "He will never tell you, Sandra. He would rather carry the pain than let you carry the guilt. But you deserve the truth." Keanu raised a hand slightly, his calm, steady voice breaking through. "Enough, Mark. This isn't your story to tell." Sandra's breath caught. "But it's mine too, isn't it? If you sacrifice something for me, don't I deserve to know? The cafe went quiet again. Finally, Keanu sat down across from her, his shoulders heavy with memories. Years ago, he began softly. During the filming of our first movie together, something happened. A director approached me with a role that could have changed everything for me. It was the kind of offer that comes once in a lifetime, the kind of role that launches someone into a different world of fame, power, opportunities. But it wasn't just a role. It was a commitment that would have meant leaving the set we were on, leaving the project we were building, and leaving you. Sandra's throat tightened. Leaving me? Keanu nodded, his eyes steady on hers. You were struggling back then. You carried so much weight and you didn't let anyone see it. But I did. I saw the nights you sat alone on set, trying to hold yourself together. I saw the pressure you faced, the whispers, the doubts. I knew that if I walked away for that role, you would have been left standing there alone. And I couldn't do it. I chose to stay. I chose you. His words sank deep into her chest like stones. She had no idea. No one did. All those years when people said Keanu was too humble, too quiet, too strange for Hollywood's game, they never knew what he had traded in silence. Mark leaned forward, his voice sharp. He lost more than you think, Sandra. That role made another actor into a star beyond imagination. Endorsements, awards, doors that never opened for Keanu because he stayed behind. He could have been in a very different place. But he gave it all up, for you. Sandra's eyes filled with tears. Why didn't you tell me? Why carry this alone? Keanu's voice was calm, but his eyes glistened. Because love isn't about debt. It's not about reminding someone what they owe you. It's about giving without expecting anything back. I never wanted you to feel guilty. I never wanted you to think your happiness came at my cost. I made my choice freely, and I would make it again. Sandra covered her mouth, her tears slipping through her fingers. The weight of his sacrifice pressed against her heart. All the years she had doubted herself, all the times she had questioned if her presence in his life was a burden, now she saw that he had chosen her, even when it meant losing something priceless. But Mark wasn't finished. His voice was lower now, almost trembling. There's more. He wasn't the only one who sacrificed. Someone else paid a price for that decision, too. Keanu's head snapped toward him, his voice sharp. Stop! Mark's eyes darted between them. She deserves to know. The studio blacklisted me because I tried to defend him that night. I spoke up when others questioned his choice. I thought protecting both of you was worth it, but I lost my job, my career. I've been carrying that silence ever since. The cafe seemed to tilt as Sandra tried to process everything. Two men, both carrying scars from choices made in her shadow. One who gave up a career path to protect her. Another who lost his because he stood by them. Her chest tightened with a crushing mix of gratitude, sorrow, and guilt. This is too much. I never asked for this. I never wanted anyone to hurt because of me. Keanu reached for her hand again, steady, grounding her. You didn't ask for it. We chose it. Because sometimes the heart sees a value beyond fame, beyond money, beyond power. You were worth it, Sandra. You will always be worth it. Her tears fell freely now, and for the first time in years, she felt truly seen. But behind that tenderness, a storm still lingered. Because secrets once spoken have a way of stirring the world outside. Mark leaned back, his eyes dark. The truth won't stay hidden forever. People talk. Studios dig up old files. And when it comes out, the press will twist it into something ugly. They'll say he ruined his career for you. They'll call you selfish. They'll paint both of you as fools. Are you ready for that? The question hung in the air like a blade. Sandra looked at Keanu, her hand in his, her heart trembling between fear and faith. And in that fragile silence, she realized something important. Love wasn't tested in whispers of confession. It was tested when the world tried to break it apart. Keanu's eyes met hers, calm but unyielding. Let them talk. Our truth is stronger than their noise. And yet, even as those words gave her strength, Sandra knew the battle ahead would not be so simple. Because the world didn't just listen, it demanded answers. And tomorrow, when the headlines began, their quiet truth would no longer belong only to them. The morning sun rose over Los Angeles, but it did not bring peace. Instead, it carried headlines, loud, bold, and merciless. Every news outlet, every gossip site, every television program had one story on repeat. Keanu Reeves gave up his career for Sandra Bullock. The story spread like wildfire. Photographs of them leaving the studio hand in hand were splashed across front pages. Old clips from their first film resurfaced, re-edited into dramatic montages. Talk shows buzzed with heated debates, some praising Keanu's sacrifice as the ultimate act of love, others accusing Sandra of destroying his future. Sandra sat in her living room, her phone buzzing nonstop. Messages from friends, reporters, strangers, even family, some filled with kindness, some filled with venom. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through comments online, millions of people dissecting her life as if it were a game. She used him. He threw his career away for her. Maybe it was true love. Maybe she's the reason he disappeared from bigger roles. Every word cut deep, and with each one, guilt clawed at her chest. Her phone rang again. It was her manager, voice sharp and urgent. "Sandra, this is spinning out of control. The studio wants a statement. The press won't stop until you answer. If you stay silent, they'll bury you in their own version of the story." But what could she say? How could she explain love without making it sound like scandal? That evening, Keanu came to her house. His calm presence filled the space, but even he could not stop the storm outside. He sat across from her, his eyes steady. "They've already decided their version of the truth," Sandra whispered, tears in her eyes. "How do we fight this?" Keanu shook his head gently. "We don't fight it. We live through it. Let the noise scream. The truth isn't theirs to own. It's ours." His words gave her strength, but before she could speak, there was a knock at the door. Sandra hesitated, her heart racing. When she opened it, she froze. Standing there was a woman she hadn't seen in years. Lena, a friend from her past, someone who had once been close, but had drifted away in silence. Her expression was heavy with secrets. "I need to talk to you," Lena said firmly, stepping inside before Sandra could answer. "And it can't wait." Sandra's chest tightened. "Lena, after all these years?" "Why now?" Lena's eyes darted to Keanu, then back to Sandra. "Because this storm isn't just about you and him. There's something else buried in the past, something that will come out soon. And when it does, you need to be ready." Keanu rose slowly, his eyes narrowing. "What do you mean?" Lena hesitated, then finally spoke. The role Keanu gave up back then, it wasn't just a simple opportunity. It was tied to powerful people in Hollywood, people who don't forgive betrayal. His choice didn't just cost him, it made enemies. Enemies who have been waiting for the right moment to strike. And now, with the spotlight back on both of you, they see their chance. Sandra's knees weakened, and she gripped the edge of the sofa. "Enemies? What are you saying? That this isn't just gossip anymore?" Lena nodded grimly. "It's bigger than gossip. They will twist everything. They will dig into your lives, and they won't stop until they destroy both of you. They want the world to believe this story isn't love. It's a scandal. They want to erase everything you've built." Keanu's face stayed calm, but his silence spoke of the weight he carried. Sandra shook her head, her voice breaking. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why carry this alone?" Lena's eyes softened with regret. "Because I thought it was over. I thought the past had died quietly. But seeing those headlines today, I knew it was only the beginning. I had to warn you." Keanu placed a hand on Sandra's shoulder, steady and grounding. "Let them come. They can't take away what we know to be true." But Sandra wasn't sure. She knew love could survive whispers, but could it survive war? Could it survive when powerful forces tried to twist it into something ugly? Later that night, as the city roared with noise outside, Sandra sat by her window staring at the stars. Keanu was beside her, silent but present, his hand gently holding hers. She thought of the journey so far, the secret she had finally confessed, the sacrifice he had revealed, the past that was now rising like a storm. She had wanted to whisper her heart to him in peace, but instead, her words had set fire to the world. Still, when she turned to look at Keanu, his eyes carried no fear, only steadiness, only love. "Whatever comes," he whispered finally, "we face it together." Sandra leaned into him, her tears falling quietly. The storm outside was growing, and enemies were waiting in the shadows. But for now, in that fragile silence, they still had each other, and that gave her strength to face what tomorrow would bring. The days that followed were not quiet. Every newspaper headline, every talk show, every online thread carried their names. Love or scandal, sacrifice or mistake. The world debated their lives as if it were a movie script to be rewritten at will. But beneath the noise, the threat Lena warned about was real. Sandra received anonymous letters, each one harsher than the last. "You ruined him. He will regret you. The truth will bury you both." Keanu, calm on the outside, carried the burden of keeping her safe. She noticed how he started checking the locks twice, how his eyes scanned crowds with quiet caution. One night, the storm broke. They were scheduled to appear at a charity gala, an event meant to show the world they were not broken by the headlines. The ballroom glowed with chandeliers, cameras lined the walls, and the air carried both admiration and judgment. Whispers followed them as they entered, hand in hand, their bond steady despite the noise. But then, it happened. On stage, just as Keanu was about to speak, the lights flickered. The large screen behind them suddenly lit up with images, old contracts, confidential memos, fragments of letters. It was a deliberate attack, meant to paint Keanu as a man who had thrown away millions for foolishness, and Sandra as a woman who lured him into ruin. Gasps filled the room. Cameras flashed wildly. The audience leaned forward, hungry for drama. Sandra's heart raced, her chest tightening with shame and fear. This was what Lena had warned them about. Enemies had chosen their moment perfectly, but Keanu did not flinch. He stepped forward, his calm presence filling the stage. His voice was steady, clear, cutting through the chaos. "Yes," he said. "I gave up roles. I gave up opportunities. But what I gained was worth more than any fame, any fortune. I gained the chance to stand by someone who mattered when it counted. If that makes me a fool in the eyes of the world, then I accept it. Because love is not measured in awards or money. Love is measured in what we are willing to give, not what we are willing to take." The room fell silent. The reporters, the critics, the whispers. Everyone froze, stunned by his quiet courage. Sandra felt tears blur her vision. She stepped beside him, her voice trembling but strong. "I never asked for his sacrifice. I never asked for him to choose me over a role. But he did, because that is who he is, a man who puts kindness above ambition, who sees people before power. And if the world calls that weakness, then let me tell you, it is his greatest strength. It is the reason I whispered my heart to him, because he has always been the man who listens, who cares, who protects without asking for anything back." The audience erupted, not with anger, but with applause. People stood clapping, their eyes wet with emotion. The enemies who had tried to expose them found their plan crumbling, because instead of shame, the truth had only revealed beauty. Lena watched from the side, her eyes soft with relief. The storm had come, but love had stood taller. That night, when the gala ended and the crowd dispersed, Sandra and Keanu walked outside into the cool night air. The world still buzzed around them, but for the first time in weeks, she felt light. She turned to him, her voice soft, fragile, but free. "Keanu, do you know what I felt when I whispered my heart to you that night?" He smiled gently. "Tell me again." She took his hand, her tears shining in the moonlight. "I felt like I was finally home. Not in a place, not in a house, but in you." Keanu's eyes glistened, and without a word he pulled her close. His silence spoke louder than anything else. It said she was safe, she was seen, she was loved beyond measure. The cameras would keep flashing, the world would keep talking, but none of it mattered anymore. Because in the end, the story was not about sacrifice or scandal. It was about two hearts that chose each other, again and again, even when the world tried to tear them apart. And in that quiet, in that embrace, the story finally found its truth.